Ultimatums. Deandra. If I could devise a solid reason not to be here, I would jump on it. I wasn't in the mood for Mom yapping on and on about how she wanted grandchildren again. No son ever was. I didn't need a wife to do what I needed to do. I'm successful. I ran the business well and had women when I wanted. What could I possibly need a wife for? I didn't need anyone to tie me down, much less a gold digger. That's right. I'm sure any woman who wants me right now isn't just interested in my charming looks. The McCarthy Empire is quite the motivation for anyone. I didn't want that. When I decided to settle down, I wanted to be real. I already had a plan of my own. I would marry a classy lady, more of a partnership than a real marriage, but what did it matter? I don't believe in love anyway. I never really saw it in my own home. Let's be honest, love never leads to a happily ever after, except of course, if the couple is deceiving themselves. I heard footsteps and sat up instinctively. My mom didn't like slouching. As she entered the room, I stood up to hug her. I smiled as I stared at her, really taking her in. You could never catch my mother on a bad day. Her hair was always made, no creases on her dress, and her face was always perfect. In all of my 30 years of life, she has always looked like this. Prim and proper, the very image of the McCarthy Empire. It made growing up hard. You couldn't really play rough with the kids. My sister and I had to always be on our best behavior, be at the top of our class, and we could never be emotional around her. My mom believed that emotions were messy. She was classy, never messy. I closed the remaining distance and gave her a quick cheek kiss and hug. It was always like this since I went off to boarding school. My mom was never affectionate. The highest affection she showed us was when she gave us forehead kisses. Mom took a seat on her plush couch and proceeded to relax elegantly. She never did anything in a way less than elegant. Even the house had been changed time and time again to her preference. However, one thing was sure, it always exuded timeless elegance and luxury. Right from the ornate double doors, visitors were wowed when they stepped in. Mom always favored ivory, that's one thing that never changed. Our walls were always a warm ivory, complementing the gleaming marble floors in the 30-room mansion. I picked up my glass of wine from the intricately carved mahogany coffee table and took a sip, smiling at my mother. Of course, she would have something to say about me drinking this early in the day. But I didn't care. It helped me deal with her whining and constant ultimatums. If she was calling a meeting and insisted I was here, I definitely knew it would be something I wouldn't like. Son, you're starting your drinking early today, I see? She gave a coy smile. I dropped the glass on the table, smiling. You're more than welcome to join me if you'd like, I invited. Cut the crap, son. You'll need to be completely lucid for what I have to say. She frowned slightly. Well, out with it then, I have a meeting later. I tried to keep up the casual smile. Despite my many contributions to the company, Mom has retained her CEO position in the company. I hoped today was the day she would finally hand over the reins. Deandra, I wanted to see you today because we needed to talk about the company's future. Mom began, her voice measured but firm. I fidgeted nervously in my chair. I could sense the gravity of her words. What's on your mind, Mom? You are aware that you're the heir to this company. You're the legacy of the family. She began, her tone of voice sharp. Yes, I know, I replied, my jaw tightening in defiance. If she was going to tell me of all the ways I failed her again, I wasn't going to give her the pleasure of a reaction. You've learned a lot from your father, she said, leaning forward with intent, and very little from me, which is disappointing if I must say. Her eyes never left mine. But that's about to change. Starting now, you need to settle and secure the future of this company for generations to come. I felt a knot forming in my stomach. I have always dedicated myself to the company, working tirelessly to prove myself capable, even though Mom never saw it. I have tried to tell her that marriage wasn't a priority for me, and the pressure from her was beginning to weigh me down. You can't say that, Mom, I said with a tight smile, trying to remain calm. It's high time you found a wife, and I insist you do that quickly, she stated, her tone leaving no room for argument. I clenched my fist, feeling a surge of anger and frustration. I've always resented my mom's controlling nature, especially when it came to my personal life. I won't be rushed into marriage, Mom, I stated with a firm voice and met her gaze head-on. She didn't like that. She never liked being disagreed with. Her eyes narrowed, and her eyes became even more frosty. You have 6 months, Deandra. Find a wife or be prepared to step aside. I laughed in disbelief. You're joking, right? Who would you give the company to then? Your daughter wants nothing to do with the company because of you. She likes living her life free from your control. Quite frankly, I do too, but for some unknown reason, you still want to stick your nose in my personal business and attempt to control my life. Her eyes hardened further. This is about the legacy of our family and the future of the company. You need to take it seriously. I am taking it seriously, but you can't force me into a marriage. That's not how this works. I retorted. Dad always said I got my stubbornness from Mom. Maybe that's why we never seem to agree on anything. I can, I will, and I am, she smiled eerily. Don't make me do what I would like to avoid. The room fell silent, the weight of her unspoken words hanging heavily in the air. I felt torn between my love for the company and the need to be in control of my life. Fine, I gave in with a sigh, but I need more than 6 months. I could hear my voice tinged with frustration, and I tried to keep it out. You can't make or expect me to make a life-altering decision in that short amount of time. Her icy expression showed no sign of empathy or compromise. Most people don't even have 6 months to make decisions. I have given you all the time I can. Now you have a responsibility to this family, and I won't let you throw it all away because of your hoeing around behavior. I could feel the tension growing like a fog over us. I have always tried to please my mom. I attended the social gatherings and events she wanted me to, hired who she preferred, and even showed up when she wanted me to, but none of it mattered to her. There's no room for negotiations, Deandra. I will not let your indecisiveness be the end of what we built, she said calmly, her voice unyielding. Where exactly am I supposed to find a wife in 6 months? I retorted, trying to keep my voice calm. What happened to Liz? She's a good girl, she comes from a good family. You could do much worse. Her expression softened for a moment as she spoke of Liz, and then her resolve returned quickly. You would love that, wouldn't you? I smiled bitterly. You would be way too excited if you ever got the chance to pick my wife. I'm not picking your wife, but under the circumstances, you don't have a lot of choice, do you? She smiled, knowing she had won. Fine. I stood up. I'll get you a daughter-in-law, but I won't go down without a fight, and I will choose my own wife. Without any interference from you. I expect nothing less. Her eyes gleamed with victory. I clenched my teeth, feeling defeated but defiant. I'll get a wife, but let me be clear, this is not for you. I'm only doing it for the company, the birthright that Dad left to me, the very one you refused to give me. I'm out, I have a meeting to get to. This was the most unpleasant experience. I'll see myself out. With those words, I stormed out, unable to bear the conversation any longer. I knew there was nothing I could do to change her mind, but I knew one thing for sure. I was not going to pick anybody my mom picked out for me. I didn't care what anybody said. Of course she loved Liz, they were alike in more ways than one. A mix of anger and determination was my motivation. I knew that the next 6 months would be chaos in meeting the deadline and finding the right person. Where the heck do you find a short-notice willing wife anyway? It's been 2 months since my last conversation with my mother, and I was no closer to finding a wife. My mother knew the threat of losing everything would work. The mere fact that I was no closer to finding a wife annoyed the crap out of me. I sighed and sipped my glass of red wine, as my thoughts stayed consumed by the weight of my mother's ultimatum. The soft chatter and clinking of glasses around me served as a distant hum. I looked up for the first time in a while. I loved coming to this restaurant. The ambiance was always right for me. It was my place of solace because it was tucked away from the heart of the city. As I contemplated my predicament, my attention drifted to the restaurant entrance as a lady walked in. She piqued my interest immediately. She was beautiful, and I was grateful for the diversion from my thoughts. She glided with an air of quiet confidence. She carefully made her way to an empty table and turned a few heads along the way. Of course she did. Her presence was captivating, and she was beautiful to look at. She had dark lustrous curls that framed her face beautifully and cascaded down her back. Her warm chocolate skin seemed to glow softly in the restaurant's lights. But her eyes were the star of the show. Her honey brown eyes held a hint of mystery and depth that would draw you in. I couldn't take my eyes off her. I watched as she sat down, and the waitress must have said something funny because he had her smiling. Her smile lit up her entire face. It was clear that her laughter could easily light up a room. I watched as her eyes scanned the menu before ordering with a warm smile. I turned to my glass of red wine again, hoping to get back to my thoughts. But it wasn't long before I was drawn back to watching her. She appeared lost in thought as she ate, her fingers gently grasping her fork. But she played with the food more than she ate. A wave of curiosity washed over me as I wondered what occupied her mind so intently. Suddenly she sat up, staring ahead with a shocked look on her face. Lost in my own thoughts, I hadn't noticed a man approach her table. He had a menacing smile on his face, and she seemed to recoil from his presence. He sat down, saying something to her. It was clear they knew each other, but something was off with their conversation. He appeared eager and self-assured, a stark contrast to her hesitance. Their body language spoke volumes. As he leaned in, she leaned back until she couldn't lean any farther away from him. Clearly, she was only trying to maintain a calm facade. Something else was going on beneath the surface. As I watched, I couldn't help but wonder how they knew each other. Were they friends turned enemies, former business associates, or something more? Maybe he was a jilted lover who couldn't let it go. He was probably hoping for a rekindling of their romance. I also considered the possibility that they were friends, and that he might be looking for something more. Whatever their history was, her demeanor suggested that she wasn't at ease with him. She sat stiffly, a subtle tenseness gripping her body. He was beginning to get frantic, and I noticed her eyes flicker toward the door more than once. My curiosity was edging toward concern at this point. The more I watched, the more I sensed she wasn't at ease with him. Her body language, subtle as she tried to be, betrayed her unease. The man tried to touch her, and I watched her flinch away. Without knowing what I was doing, I got up and moved in her direction. I've always been protective. It comes with having a kid sister. She clearly needed help, and I couldn't resist the urge to help her. As I neared their table, she noticed my approach and looked up, a look of uncertainty on her face. She was probably wondering who I was. Well, she was about to find out. "Hey babe, sorry I'm late, traffic was a pain today," I said, smiling as I slid into the seat next to her. My smile was bright, but my heart was pounding with excitement and uncertainty. Before either of them could react, I leaned in and kissed her gently. Yet I found myself deepening the kiss a second later. Her lips were soft and warm, and she tasted a strawberry. At that moment, the restaurant seemed to fade away. I was surprised to find her responding to the kiss. She wrapped her arms around me and sank into the kiss, deepening the illusion we were creating. She was playing along, and it got my heart racing at the charade we were putting on. We finally pulled back, and I wrapped my arm around her shoulder, pulling her closer with my body acting as a shield of defense. I could feel her surprise, but she was determined to play along and turned to me with a bright smile. "Hey babe, I already ordered. You were taking too long." She smiled sweetly, her hand resting on my thigh. We were the very picture of a couple in love. The man looked taken back. His demeanor changed immediately. He was no longer the self-assured man that bothered her minutes ago. He glared at me, clearly not expecting this turn of events. "Who the heck are you?" he spat out, his tone reflecting his irritation. I stared him down without hesitation. "Her boyfriend." "Who are you, and why are you here?" I replied calmly. He looked taken aback and seemed to simmer in rage. He turned his hostility to her. "I see you moved on quickly, didn't you? You're nothing but a slut," he spat at her, the bitterness evident in his voice. She remained silent, maintaining the smile on her face, but I saw the hurt flicker in her eyes. "My man, are you stupid, dumb, or both?" "Neither." "No, you're definitely one of the two, if you think you can disrespect my girl like that in front of me like that." I could feel my own anger start to simmer. I stood up, my imposing physique making him lean back immediately. "Listen up, you simple-minded humpback, stupid no-good mother duck. I'm only gonna say this once. Don't you ever talk to my girl like that. I promise you, if you ever do it again, you won't like what comes next. It's time for you to bounce. Leave now," I said firmly, staring him down. Although my voice remained steady, I could feel the adrenaline coursing through me. He stood up too, knocking his chair back. "Whatever, I never really wanted you anyway," he scoffed. He shot a final scowl at her before storming off, muttering under his breath. I watched him walk away, before turning my attention back to the lady sitting next to me. She sighed in relief as he walked out the door, and then turned a genuine smile filled with gratitude at me. "Thank you so much for stepping in. I really appreciate it." "Are you okay?" I asked gently, sitting back down. A mix of emotions washed across her face: gratitude, surprise, and a hint of vulnerability. "Thanks again," she repeated, and the sincerity rang true in her voice. "No need to thank me," I responded. I could feel my heart warm at her genuine gratitude. It was my pleasure. No one should have to deal with that kind of behavior. She gave a small smile, clearly reliving the experience. "How can I repay you for this?" she suddenly asked. The question caught me off guard, and I stared at her as I struggled to find the right words. "You don't have to pay me back," I replied, trying to brush off the question. "Come on, there must be something I can do to say thank you properly," she persisted, a playful smile on her lips. "You really don't have to." I refused again. "I didn't do it so you can reward me." "I insist," she said firmly, but I could hear the smile in her voice. "How about I treat you to lunch another time?" "You want to buy me lunch?" I asked slowly, an amused smile playing on my lips. "Yes," she declared. "It's the least I can do to thank you properly." I chuckled at the thought. No woman had ever bought me lunch before. This was new. "That's really kind of you, but you really don't have to do that," I insisted, trying to sound nonchalant. "I know this little cafe on Fifth Avenue. I think you'd love it," she pushed, clearly not backing down. "How about I get your number and call you to set up a time that works for you?" At that moment, an impulsive thought crossed my mind, and before I could censor myself, I found myself saying, "Actually, there is something you can do." She perked right up with a smile, glad to oblige. "Great. What can I do?" "Marry me," I stated, my smile slowly fading. She laughed out loud. I earned that, I guess. It was an absurd suggestion. I would laugh at me too. "You must be joking," she said, still laughing, and I shook my head in the negative. Her laughter faded slowly. "You're joking, right?" she repeated, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. I shook my head as I maintained my serious expression. "I'm serious, marry me." "You're crazy," she blurted. "You don't even know my name." "I could learn it," I replied, my expression resolute. "You can't be serious. Is there a hidden camera somewhere? Is this a prank of some kind?" she said, her eyes searching mine for signs I was joking. I kept my expression unchanged as I replied. "There are no hidden cameras, and I assure you this is no prank. There is a perfectly reasonable answer for this request. I would love to tell you. Will you hear me out?" I could see different emotions running through her face. Her mind was clearly racing with thoughts of how to react. Of course, the idea of marrying someone she barely knew was absurd. She was probably wondering if she had run from the devil into the deep blue sea. She struggled for words. Thank you for the proposal." I smiled at her choice of words, but she continued, "I'm sure you can understand my choice to reject that offer." I smiled gently. "I actually don't need an answer right now, but I would take that lunch if it's still on the table." She smiled gently, still stunned by the turn of events. "Of course, I would still love to take you out to lunch." "Great," I responded, keeping a steady gaze on her. I stretched out my hand. "Give me your phone?" She obliged slowly, clearly wondering what the strange man was up to. I input my number and handed the phone back. "Call me when you're ready to deliver on that lunch," I said, standing up. "I'm Deandra, by the way." "Keisha," she said gently, looking up at me. "Nice to meet you, Deandra." I smiled. "The pleasure is mine, beautiful. I'll be expecting your call." With that, I turned and walked away. As I walked out, my mind was buzzing with excitement. I just proposed to a woman I met less than an hour ago. This was beyond unconventional. It was reckless. But that wasn't surprising. What really baffles me is how I don't regret it. The thought of a marriage born out of convenience hadn't occurred to me at first, but when the idea popped into my head, I knew it was the perfect solution to my mother's demand. It didn't hurt that Keisha was easy on the eyes. I couldn't wait for her call. Things were finally picking up, and I was excited about it.